I always thought I knew my mom. To me, she was a constant, steady, reliable, a woman who had always been there. She was the one who stayed up late sewing buttons on my school jacket, the one who made my favorite chocolate chip cookies on the weekends, and the one who whispered words of encouragement before every big exam. But I was wrong. My name is Ellie, and I'm the youngest of 3. Growing up, I always felt safe with my mom. I never questioned her decisions or the way she raised us. She was the perfect mom, as far as I was concerned. But that was before I found the letter. It all started one afternoon when I was helping her clean out some old boxes in the attic. Mom had always been a bit of a hoarder, storing all the old letters, photos, and mementos from years gone by. I was going through a dusty box filled with birthday cards when I found something that made my heart skip a beat, a letter, addressed to her, but written in a handwriting I didn't recognize. I didn't mean to read it, but my curiosity got the best of me. I opened the envelope carefully, as if I were unwrapping a secret that had been hidden for years. The letter was dated over 20 years ago, when I was just a little girl, and it was from someone named David. The letter began with warm words, but as I read on, my stomach churned. It was clear from the words on the page that this was no ordinary letter. It was intimate, filled with emotion. The kind of letter you don't send unless you have feelings you're trying to hide. It was a love letter. I don't know why, but I felt my heart start to race. I sat down in the attic, the letter clutched in my hands, trying to process what I had just read. What was this? Why was Mom hiding this from us? Why had I never known about David? The more I thought about it, the more questions piled up. I had to know more. I had to know what my mom wasn't telling me. I waited until that evening, when the house was quiet. Mom was in the kitchen, making dinner, humming the same tune she always did while cooking. I stood in the doorway, watching her, unsure of how to bring up what I had just discovered. "Mom," I started, my voice shaky, "who is David?" Her hands froze in midair, a spoon dangling from her fingers. She didn't turn around right away, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "What are you talking about, Ellie?" she said, her voice unsteady. "I found a letter," I said, taking a deep breath. "From someone named David." It was from a long time ago, before I was born. "What's going on, Mom? Who is he?" There was a long silence. Mom didn't say anything at first. She put the spoon down, and I could see her face turn pale. It was like I had just ripped open a wound she had tried so hard to keep closed. "Ellie," she said finally, her voice quiet and strained. "That's not something I've ever talked about. It's a part of my past that I never wanted you to know." "Why not?" I asked, confused and hurt. "What happened with David? Why are you hiding this from me?" Mom sighed deeply and turned to face me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she tried to stay composed. "It's not easy to talk about, Ellie. David was someone I loved before I met your father. But things didn't work out. And after everything, I chose to leave that part of my life behind." "But why?" I pressed, still holding on to the letter. "Why hide it from us, from me?" "Because, Ellie," she said, her voice breaking, "David wasn't just someone I loved. He was someone I was supposed to be with. But I made a choice. I chose your father. And I chose this life. I didn't want you to know the mistakes I made, the things I regret. I didn't want you to see me as someone who had a past full of secrets." I didn't know what to say. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, but it wasn't anger, it was confusion. How could Mom, the woman I had always admired, the woman who was always so strong and steady, have this secret life? Why hadn't she ever told me? Why had she buried it so deep? Mom, I said softly, are you still thinking about him, about David? She looked at me for a long time, her eyes filled with regret. No, Ellie. I haven't thought about him in years. But the letter. It reminded me of a time I thought I had left behind. I didn't know how to respond to that. The woman I had always known suddenly felt so distant, like she wasn't the person I thought she was. I didn't know what to do with this new information. It felt like the foundation of our family had shifted, and I wasn't sure how to put it all back together. The days after that conversation with Mom were tense, filled with an undercurrent of unresolved emotions. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter, about David. I wanted answers, but I didn't know how to ask. How could I bring it up again without making her feel like I was prying too much? But the truth was, I needed to know more. My mind raced with questions. Who was David? Why had she never told us about him? And most importantly, why did it feel like the ground beneath me was slipping away? I tried to go about my normal routine, but nothing felt normal. Every time I looked at Mom, I saw the woman she used to be, but I also saw someone who had hidden a part of herself from me, from our family. And the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like this secret wasn't just about David. It was about everything she had kept buried for all these years. That weekend, I decided to visit the house where she had grown up. Mom had always mentioned her old home, how she'd moved away after marrying Dad, but I never really knew much about her life before us. She'd always been so focused on us, on her family, that I never thought to ask about her past. But now, it felt like I had to. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I felt like this was the only way to understand the person my mother had been before I knew her. I didn't know if she'd be happy I was going or if she'd be angry, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the answers I was looking for were hidden in that house. The house was just as I remembered from the photos Mom used to show me, a big, old Victorian house on a quiet street. It was the kind of place that looked like it held 1,000 stories, a place where memories were tucked into every corner. As I stood in front of it, I felt a sense of unease. Maybe it was the weight of all the secrets, or maybe it was just the fact that I was about to uncover something that might change everything. I knocked on the door, and it creaked open to reveal an older woman with a kind smile. "You must be Ellie," she said, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Your mother told me you might be coming by. I'm Mrs. Richardson, your mother's childhood neighbor." "Hi," I said, trying to smile. I didn't mean to intrude. I was hoping to learn a little more about my mom's life here, if that's okay. Mrs. Richardson seemed to hesitate for a moment, then nodded. "Come in, dear. Your mother's always been a bit tight-lipped about her past, but I've got plenty of stories to tell." I followed her inside, and the old house smelled like nostalgia, like dust, old wood, and something familiar I couldn't quite place. Mrs. Richardson led me into the living room, where old family photos lined the walls, and a few antique chairs sat around a fireplace. "Your mother was always such a bright girl," Mrs. Richardson began, sitting down in one of the chairs. "She had big dreams. She was a lot like you, actually." I smiled nervously. I didn't know she had dreams beyond just us. Mrs. Richardson chuckled softly. "Oh, she did. She was in love once, you know. A boy named David." The mention of David made my heart skip a beat. I leaned forward, hanging on every word. "Yes, David," she continued, her voice softening. "They were inseparable when they were younger. He was a good boy, but things didn't work out between them." "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mrs. Richardson sighed. They were young, and sometimes love isn't enough. Your mother was so focused on her future, on building a life for herself, and David. Well, he wasn't ready for that. He couldn't settle down the way she needed him to. So, she left. I felt my chest tighten. But she never talked about him. Why didn't she tell me about him? She didn't want to remember it, I think, Mrs. Richardson said. It was too painful. When she met your father, she thought she'd left that part of her life behind. But sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried as well as we'd like. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. There was so much more to my mother's story than I had ever realized. I had always thought she was just the woman who raised me, the person who was always there for me. But now, I was learning that there was a whole other side to her, a side she had kept hidden from me for years. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur as Mrs. Richardson shared more stories about Mom's childhood, about the friends she had, the adventures they went on, and the love she had shared with David. But the more I learned, the more I realized that this was just the tip of the iceberg. My mother had a past life before us, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to fully understand it. As I left Mrs. Richardson's house, I felt conflicted. I wanted to confront Mom, to ask her more, but a part of me was afraid. Afraid of what the truth might reveal. Afraid of how it might change everything. The drive home felt longer than it was, and I couldn't stop thinking about the things I had learned. My relationship with my mom had always been strong, but now it felt like I was seeing her through a different lens. She wasn't just my mom. She was a woman who had lived a life before I was born, who had made choices that led her to the woman I knew. I needed to talk to her. But I wasn't sure where to start. I wasn't sure how to ask about things that were so deeply buried. When I got home, Mom was sitting in the kitchen, like she always did, sipping her coffee. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. I knew she was waiting for me to say something, but I wasn't sure what. Finally, I spoke. Mom, I went to see Mrs. Richardson today. Her face paled. Ellie, I told you I didn't want you to go there. I didn't want you to learn about that part of my life. I nodded, swallowing hard. I found out about David. About everything. Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her hands shaking as she set her coffee cup down. I don't know why you kept it from me, Mom, I said softly. But I need you to tell me everything. She sighed deeply, her voice barely a whisper. I never wanted you to see me as someone who had secrets. But I can't keep lying to you, Ellie. It's time you knew the truth. I could feel the weight of my mom's silence as she sat across from me in the kitchen. Her eyes avoided mine, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her coffee cup. It was clear she wasn't ready to talk, but I wasn't going to back down. I needed to know the truth. All of it. Mom, I said softly, trying to steady my voice. You have to tell me. I know about David. I know what happened. I need to hear it from you. Her eyes flickered to mine for a brief moment, then quickly dropped again. She was avoiding my gaze, and it hurt more than I expected. I didn't know why, but the idea of her hiding this from me felt like a betrayal, like she was keeping me from knowing the whole truth about who she was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, Mom sighed deeply and set her cup down with a soft clink. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. I never wanted to keep this from you, Ellie. I just I didn't want you to think less of me. Think less of you, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How could I think less of you? You're my mom. I just want to understand. All I've ever known is you as the woman who raised me, who loved me. But now, it feels like there's so much more I don't know. She wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath. David wasn't he just someone I loved? He was my everything. Back then. But I wasn't he ready for that kind of life. I wasn't he ready to settle down with him. I had dreams. I wanted more, and I thought your father was the man who would give that to me. I sat down, my heart racing. So, you chose Dad over him? Mom nodded slowly. I did. I thought I was making the right decision. I thought I could bury the past and build a future with your father. But I never really let go of David. I tried to, but he was always there, in the back of my mind. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice shaking now. Why didn't you tell us? I was afraid, she said quietly. Afraid that if I told you, it would make me seem weak. I didn't want you to see me as someone who had failed, who had made a mistake. I thought if I kept it hidden, maybe I could convince myself it never happened. That I never had to choose. I didn't know what to say. Part of me understood her fear, her desire to keep the past hidden. But the other part of me felt hurt that she had kept something so important from me for so long. I wanted to scream, to ask her why she couldn't have trusted me with the truth. But I didn't. I just sat there, feeling like the pieces of the puzzle were slipping further away from me. I don't know how to fix this, Mom continued, her voice cracking. I don't know if you'll ever understand, Ellie. But I had to let it go. I had to choose a different life. But what about David? I asked, my voice soft but insistent. What happened to him? Did you ever see him again? Mom's face twisted with pain, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the young woman she had been, someone full of hope, full of dreams. But those dreams had been shattered, and I could see the weight of the years she had spent suppressing her past. I never saw him again, she whispered. After I married your father, I moved on. I told myself I had to move on. But David, he was a part of me that I never truly let go of. I thought that if I buried it deep enough, no one would ever know. Especially you. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. It was as if I were seeing my mother for the first time, not as the person who raised me, but as a woman with her own story, her own pain, and her own regrets. I had always viewed her as the strong, perfect figure in my life, but now, I realized that even she had flaws. She had her own battles to fight, battles I never knew about. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the truth wasn't as simple as I had hoped. My mom had loved David, and she had chosen a different life, one that I had never fully understood. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully grasp the depth of her choices, but I knew one thing, my family was far from perfect. And maybe that was okay. I reached across the table and took her hand. Mom, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to feel. But I'm still here. I'm still your daughter. And I want to understand. Mom squeezed my hand, her tears falling freely now. Thank you, Ellie. I've never been able to talk about this, not even with your father. But you. You're my daughter. I should have trusted you with the truth. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure how things would go from here. But in that moment, I realized that sometimes, the truth is messy. It's painful. But it's also freeing. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward healing. The next few days were filled with quiet conversations between me and Mom. We talked more than we ever had, not just about David, but about everything. The past, the present, and the future. It wasn't easy, and we didn't always agree on everything, but I felt something shift between us. Maybe it was the acknowledgement of the truth, or maybe it was just the fact that we were finally facing it together. Liam and Sarah hadn't been as open about their own feelings. Sarah still seemed distant, like she was holding on to her resentment, while Liam was mostly silent. But I knew they had their own journeys to go on. We all did. The road to healing wasn't going to be quick, but at least we were on it. A few weeks later, we gathered together as a family for a quiet dinner. It wasn't like things had returned to normal, far from it, but there was a sense of understanding, a sense of trying. We were still broken in some ways, but at least we weren't hiding from each other anymore. And as I sat at the table with my family, I realized that sometimes, the past can shape who we are, but it doesn't have to define us. The most important thing is that we have each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.